Asher's grandmother left a final wish. She hoped Asher would marry me. So, even though he loved Thea, he married me out of duty. I never expected much. But when Thea killed the puppy I had raised since childhood, and Asher still chose to protect her, I stopped fighting. I contacted a professor at the Lochner base and prepared to leave everything behind to become a researcher. I gave myself 7 days to disappear. Day 1, I took off our engagement ring. Day 3, I resigned from the company. On the final day, as I was about to leave, Asher suddenly remembered the puppy. He promised to buy a new one tomorrow. Then he added, "Daphne needs a dress for the company gala, get it ready for her." I smiled and vanished from his life. Later, whenever Asher heard my name, he'd stare blankly at our engagement ring, the lover he lost, the puppy he couldn't replace. When the professor handed me the NDA, I signed without hesitation. "You understand," he said. "Once you join, your identity will be hidden for 10 years. No one will find you. Aren't you getting married?" I shook my head. "No need." It was raining when I left the office. As expected, Asher wasn't home. Daphne had taken Buddy, the dog my mother gave me before she died. When I protested, Asher blamed me and vanished for days. That evening, Daphne showed up at my door with mud on her shoes and contempt in her eyes. She kicked something at my feet. This mutt wouldn't listen. Got hit by a car. I stared at Buddy's tiny body, soaked in blood. Daphne sneered. "It's just a dog. Why cry like your mother died?" I snapped and shoved her. She fell right into Asher's arms. She started crying immediately, pretending to be the victim. Asher, the dog, ran into the street. Why is she blaming me? Asher didn't even look at Buddy. "It's just an animal. You're rich now, buy another." He defended her. Again. He called Buddy just a dog. The same Buddy he once swore to protect. The same promise he made by my dying mother's side. That night, I knew I wasn't his love. I was a placeholder. The ring, the prenup, all of it, meaningless. I hid them in a drawer. Asher never knew the prenup wasn't signed or notarized. I cremated Buddy and buried him beside my mother. When I submitted my resignation, the HR team whispered behind my back. "She resigned just like that. Must be nice being the CEO's wife." But is she really? I heard Asher gave her project to Daphne. It was true. Daphne had returned from abroad, and Asher handed her everything, my position, my project, even the clients I worked to earn. I ended up hospitalized once, and Asher told me I owed it to Daphne. When I came home with my things, Asher and Daphne were laughing over breakfast. I reached for the wrong cup and used Asher's by mistake. He hired a team to disinfect the entire house. Turns out he wasn't a clean freak. He just didn't want me near him. "Cora," Daphne giggled, "if Asher gives me your job, will you be mad?" Asher smirked. "I'm CEO. I don't need her approval." I tried to leave quietly, but Asher noticed. "Cora, what's your problem? You've been gone for days." He grabbed my arm, and I turned away. "No need. You have work to do." Daphne blocked my way upstairs and dropped the mask. "Asher never loved you. His grandma forced him to marry you. That house, that money, it's not yours. Give up the agreement. You're just a stray dog no one wants." She crossed a line when she mocked my family. "Say that again," I snapped, "and I'll tear that smile off your face." Asher rushed over, thinking I was the aggressor. Then Daphne pushed me down the stairs. Pain exploded through me. Asher rushed to help. Daphne clung to him, crying. "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to." He turned to me. "Are you okay?" "Don't blame her, it was an accident." As I gathered my things, my resignation letter fell. Asher picked it up. "You quit?" "Yes. You could have said something. You refused to hand over the project before. Why now?" I didn't answer. He softened. "Good. Saves me the trouble." Then he smiled. "Just teach Daphne the project before you go. She's not like you, she can't charm people and win half the company." I bit my lip. He'd never understand. In the following days, I trained Daphne, visited his grandmother's grave, and packed. On the last day, Asher stayed home. I feared he'd stop me. But instead, he said, "Daphne wants to go stargazing. I'm taking her camping." Oh, and prepare a dress for her for tonight's gala. Daphne added fake tears. She gave me the wrong proposal before and made me look bad. Asher glared at me. You really disappointed me. I nodded. I'll prepare the dress. Guilt flashed across his face. I'll get you a new puppy tomorrow. Like the old one. Before leaving, I ironed the dress and placed the ring and prenup on the table. The professor waited outside. He glanced at me and sighed. Let's go. Asher returned that night, slightly drunk with Daphne. The house was silent. He called out, Cora, make some soup. No answer. He turned on the lights and saw the ring and papers on the table. Who said you could take off the ring? But I was already gone. The morning Asher stumbled home reeked of alcohol and cheap perfume. Daphne clung to him, her laugh shrill, echoing through the halls of the once quiet home. But this time, no one greeted them. No soup simmering on the stove, no Cora curled on the couch with her quiet smile. Only silence. He called her name once, twice, but the house didn't answer. Then his eyes fell on the table. The ironed dress. The engagement ring he forged by hand. And beside them, the unsigned prenuptial agreement. His heart dropped. Daphne, oblivious, twirled in the dress Cora had left behind. Do I look pretty, Asher? He didn't answer. The ring mocked him from the tabletop. The silence crushed him. At that same moment, Cora stared out the small window of a military-grade transport, the final boarding call echoing behind her. 10 years of anonymity. 10 years away from betrayal, pain, and him. But for the first time in years, she felt free. Free from being the shadow of Daphne. Free from Asher's convenient affection. Free to matter for herself. The professor glanced at her clipboard. You're really not going to look back? Cora didn't flinch. There's nothing left to see. Back at the villa, Asher tore the house apart. He called her name until his voice cracked. He searched every corner as if she had melted into the walls. Daphne, growing irritated, tried to calm him. She's just angry, Asher. She'll come back. He didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on the drawer, now empty. No ring. No contract. No Cora. Suddenly, Daphne's presence felt suffocating. The house, once full of warmth, now echoed only guilt. In his drunken haze, he realized something too late. He had chosen the wrong person. And she was gone. 3 days passed. Asher hadn't gone to work. He hadn't shaved. The house, once pristine under Cora's care, now lay in silent disarray. Daphne tried to take charge, ordering the maid around, demanding attention, but Asher barely acknowledged her. He kept returning to the drawer where the ring used to be. Kept rereading the resignation letter. Kept replaying the last thing she said, don't worry, I'll prepare the dress for her. And she did. She prepared everything, then vanished. He checked every airport. Called every contact. Even questioned the professor she once mentioned in passing. Nothing. No one knew where Cora had gone. No one had seen her. Not even her old friends. Because Cora had erased herself from the world. And left Asher to sit with the ruins. Meanwhile, in a remote facility buried beneath layers of security and cold silence, Cora adjusted her new ID badge, Dr. Cora Lane. No longer Asher's fiancée. No longer Daphne's shadow. Just Cora. Each day, she woke before dawn, ran diagnostics on the rocket thrusters, collaborated with brilliant minds. No one asked about her past. No one cared who she once was. It was liberating. And lonely. At night, she sat by the window and whispered to the stars, Buddy, are you watching? I hope you're with Mom. She wore no jewelry now, except for a small pendant shaped like a paw print, Buddy's last tag. Back in the city, Daphne threw another tantrum. Asher, this is ridiculous. You're letting her ruin everything even when she's not here. Asher didn't look up. He sat in his study, staring at an old photo, Cora smiling, her arms wrapped around Buddy. It was taken the day they moved in. Back when he thought love could be postponed. Back when he believed Cora would always wait. She's not ruining anything, he said quietly. She just finally stopped waiting. Daphne scoffed, you're acting like she died. No, he said, his voice hollow. Worse. She disappeared. And took every part of me that mattered with her. The boardroom was colder than usual. Asher sat at the head of the table, dressed impeccably, but vacant behind the eyes. The project Cora had once led, now Daphne's, was unraveling fast. Investors were nervous. The deadlines were slipping. And Daphne, in her glittering heels and sharp lipstick, fumbled through her presentation with shaky confidence. Asher kept his jaw clenched, watching the once promising project crash under the weight of incompetence. "Miss Daphne," one of the investors interrupted, "these numbers don't align with the projections from 2 months ago. Where's the original lead? Ms. Cora?" Asher froze. "She resigned," he said flatly. "Personal reasons." The room buzzed. Some exchanged knowing looks. Everyone had seen the change, the sudden drop in quality, the absence of Cora's quiet brilliance. One investor leaned forward. Pity. She had a gift. Back at the base, Cora stood before the propulsion module, deep in conversation with senior scientists. Her suggestions were met with nods of respect, and for the first time in years, she felt heard, respected not for who she dated, but for what she knew. That evening, she received a secure message on her terminal. "Greater than Dr. Lane, your preliminary propulsion redesign has been approved for testing. You will now lead Phase 2. She leaned back in her chair, eyes misting. For so long, she had been an afterthought. Now, she was essential. Asher drove home in silence that night. Daphne tried to cheer him up with wine and flirtation, but he brushed past her, heading straight for the drawer. Still empty. Still no ring. He pulled out his phone and dialed an old contact, someone from the Lochner base. "Do you know where Professor Alden is?" The voice on the other end hesitated. "Why?" "I need to know if someone named Cora Lane is there." A pause. Then, "Asher. If she's there, it means she chose to vanish for 10 years. You don't find people like that." Asher's heart sank. 10 years. 10 years without her. 10 years to regret everything. Daphne stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her earrings for the company's spring gala. The dress Cora had once ironed for her now hung awkwardly, ill-fitting, no matter how much she tailored it. "Asher, are you ready?" she called, forcing cheer into her voice. He emerged from the bedroom, dressed in a dark suit, but his eyes gave him away, distant, hollow. Not once did he glance at her. At the gala, they played their parts, CEO and his fiancée. Smiles for the cameras. Toasts raised. But the moment Asher stepped aside, murmurs filled the air. "Did you hear Cora left the company? She carried that project. Daphne's just reaping the benefits. I wonder where she went." Daphne's grip tightened around her champagne glass. The ghost of Cora was everywhere. Every conversation, every compliment, always followed by a "but she's gone now." She leaned into Asher. "People are talking." Asher sipped his drink. "Let them." At the base, Cora received her first performance review. The lead engineer handed it over silently, a rare smile on his face. At the bottom of the report, in bold letters, "Greater than candidate exhibits exceptional leadership, insight, and integrity. Potential for long-term strategic advancement." Cora stared at it, barely breathing. She wasn't just surviving. She was becoming something more. Still, some nights, when the base lights dimmed and silence crept in, she'd open her encrypted locker and look at the only thing she took from her old life. A photo. Her, Buddy, and Asher. She'd marked out his face long ago, but she couldn't bring herself to destroy the image. Not yet. Maybe one day, when it stopped hurting. Meanwhile, Asher opened a drawer Daphne was forbidden to touch. Inside, the handmade ring. The old telescope. And the only letter Cora had ever written to him, folded and unopened. He stared at it, hands trembling. Then finally, after weeks, he read it. "Greater than Asher. You once said I was your calm in the chaos. But when the storm came, you didn't look for me. You ran toward it. You left me to drown quietly, so Daphne could feel like the sun. I hope she warms you. I'll take my calm with me now. Goodbye. Cora." Asher sank to the floor, the letter clutched to his chest. Daphne knocked lightly on the door. He didn't answer. because for the first time, he knew what loss really felt like. And this time, it was permanent. 6 months later, the company's quarterly performance had plummeted. The flagship project, once Cora's masterpiece, was quietly shelved. Investors began pulling out. Rumors swirled. Some blamed the market. Others whispered a harsher truth. Cora Lane's absence had left a crater they couldn't fill. Inside the boardroom, Asher stared at the numbers. "We need stability," one director said. "You need to step up, Asher. Or step down." Daphne, sitting beside him in her new designer suit, interjected. "We're doing our best. I've been." "No offense, Miss Daphne," the director cut her off coldly, "but we invested in Cora's vision. You've only diluted it." The silence was brutal. Far away, Cora watched the company's fall from a secure monitor at the research base. She didn't smile. She didn't flinch. She simply closed the tab and returned to work. Her hair was shorter now. Her back straighter. Her voice more firm in meetings. Dr. Lane had no room for bitterness. But she had learned, silence was the sharpest blade. At a charity event back in the city, a journalist cornered Daphne on the red carpet. "Miss Daphne, what happened to your engagement with Mr. Asher?" Daphne's smile faltered. "We're taking things slow. Focused on work." But Asher hadn't touched her in weeks. Hadn't spoken more than a sentence to her in days. Every time she tried to get close, he drifted further away. She found him that evening sitting in Cora's old music room, untouched since her departure. "You're still thinking about her," Daphne whispered bitterly. Asher didn't deny it. "Cora built everything in this house," he murmured. "She loved in silence, served in silence, suffered in silence. And I never noticed until the silence was all that remained." Daphne's eyes burned. "So what now? You punish me forever for not being her?" Asher finally looked at her. "No. I punish myself." That night, as Cora prepared her next mission briefing, she received a rare encrypted message from an old acquaintance at the firm. "Greater than thought you'd want to know. Asher's company is falling. Your silence. It's louder than you think." Cora stared at the screen. Then, without hesitation, she deleted the message. Because vengeance didn't always need fire or fury. Sometimes, walking away, and never looking back, was enough. The once bustling headquarters of Asher's company now echoed with unease. Projects stalled. The once praised innovation department, Cora's pride, was disbanded. The engineers she had trained had either left or refused to report to Daphne. One by one, investors began withdrawing completely. Some cited instability. Others simply said what everyone already knew. "You shouldn't have let her go." Asher stood at the window of his corner office, staring down at the street below. He hadn't been sleeping. Not since the board announced their intent to remove him unless he salvaged the situation. He picked up the phone and dialed the Lochner base again. No one answered. He left a message, again. "Cora, I don't know if these even get to you, but I wanted you to know. Everything fell apart. Without you, nothing makes sense. You were the core. Not just of this company, but of me." He paused. "I know I never deserved you. But I hope, wherever you are, you're finally happy." He ended the call with a trembling hand. Daphne walked in moments later, dressed to impress, holding her tablet. "Asher, I scheduled an emergency press meeting. We can still salvage this." But he didn't move. He looked at her, eyes hollow. "Do you ever wonder," he said, "what it's like to ruin someone? And only realize it after they're gone?" Daphne froze. He continued. She never once raised her voice. Never demanded anything. And yet, she gave everything. And all I gave her was a quiet death in her own home. Asher, leave. At the research base, Cora climbed the steel stairs to the top of the launch observation deck. The first prototype of the rocket she helped design stood tall on the launch pad, seconds from ignition. The countdown echoed in the chamber. Her breath fogged in the cold air. T-10. The flame ignited. The ground shook. Lift off. She watched it disappear into the sky. And in that moment, she smiled, not for the team, not for the success, but for herself. Because while Asher's empire crumbled, hers was just beginning to rise. The headlines came crashing down. CEO Asher Lane resigns amid internal collapse. Whistleblowers reveal nepotism, project mismanagement. Where is Cora Lane now? Public scrutiny intensified. Cora's name resurfaced, not through interviews or statements, but through whispers, articles, and testimonials. Investors praised her intellect. Engineers shared how she worked late into the night, fixing Daphne's errors behind the scenes. Former colleagues quietly admitted, she built the foundation. They just painted over it. Even without showing her face, Cora's legacy began erasing Daphne's lies. And the world started remembering who really built the empire. Meanwhile, Asher sat in his grandmother's old garden, unkempt now, but still quiet, still sacred. He placed a small framed photo of Buddy beneath the tree where they used to play. I let her walk away thinking she didn't matter, he murmured. But she was the only one who ever did. The garden echoed back only the rustle of wind. Daphne arrived, heels crunching the gravel. So, it's over? Asher didn't look at her. You knew what you were doing. The project, the ring, even Buddy. She stepped forward, voice trembling. Asher, I love you. He finally turned to her. No, Daphne. You loved winning. And now that you've lost, you're just scared. He stood up, eyes clear for the first time in months. I've already lost the one person who ever loved me without needing to be seen. There's nothing left you can take. At the base, Cora was invited to deliver a keynote to a classified delegation of international scientists. She walked to the podium in a sleek black suit, poised, focused. No makeup. No jewelry. Only her nameplate, Dr. Cora Lane, lead systems architect. She looked out at the room, filled with the brightest minds in the world, and began. Some people think silence is weakness. But in truth, silence is where clarity grows, where resolve takes root. I didn't need to prove anything when I left, because what I built would speak for itself. The room went quiet. Then applause broke out, long, respectful, and rising. She didn't flinch. She simply nodded, quietly reclaiming the power that was always hers. The house was too quiet now. Without Cora's soft humming in the mornings, without her meticulous touch, it felt more like a hollow museum than a home. Asher sat in the study surrounded by untouched artifacts of their life together, her books, the telescope, the dress she once wore to his grandmother's birthday. Everything smelled like regret. He reached for his phone again. One more message. Greater than Cora. I know I don't deserve a response. I saw the launch. I knew that was your work. I'm proud of you. I hope you found peace. If there's ever a day you're willing to talk, I'll be here. But if not, I'll carry this silence. Because I earned it. He didn't send it. Instead, he wrote it on paper, folded it, and placed it in the drawer beside the ring he once swore she'd never remove. At the research base, Cora was nominated for a Global Innovation Award. Cameras flashed. A documentary crew requested an interview. She politely declined. She didn't want fame. Only fulfillment. Her work was speaking, loudly. And now, the world listened. That evening, she returned to her quarters and found a small package waiting at her door. No sender. Inside was a photo of her and Buddy, restored, unmarked, and a card in neat handwriting. Greater than I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I'm sorry I saw you too late. She stared at it for a long time. There were no tears. Only silence. Then she tucked it into a locked box beside her old ID, and turned out the light. Back in the city, Daphne packed her things. The media had turned on her. Her name was no longer associated with elegance, but with deception. Asher, say something, she begged one last time. But he didn't. He just watched her go, wordless. Because now he understood the value of silence. And the cost of not listening when it mattered. 10 years later. A cold wind brushed against the glass windows of the newly inaugurated Global Aeronautics Hall. Reporters swarmed outside, cameras flashing as world leaders and scientists gathered inside to honor the woman behind the decade's most revolutionary propulsion system. Ladies and gentlemen, the announcer said, please welcome Dr. Cora Lane. She walked onto the stage in a tailored midnight blue suit, composed, radiant. The applause was deafening, but she didn't smile for the crowd. She smiled for herself. I spent many years silent, she began, not because I had nothing to say, but because I was always speaking to the wrong people. There was a pause, some knowing nods from the audience. Sometimes you must lose everything, your home, your title, even your name, to discover who you truly are. And once you find that, you never let anyone take it from you again. Applause roared again. But as the hall celebrated, one man stood quietly at the back. Asher. Older, humbled, alone. He didn't approach her. He didn't dare. Instead, he clutched a worn photograph of her with Buddy, creased, weathered, but cherished. Outside the hall, as the ceremony ended, Cora stepped into the night air. She stood beneath the stars, her stars, just as she once dreamed. The reporter ran to her. Dr. Lane, any message for the young women who see you as their role model? She paused, then said clearly, don't wait for someone to choose you. Choose yourself. That's where everything begins. And miles away, in the quiet garden Asher had long since restored, a small plaque now sat under the tree. For Buddy. For Cora. For everything I should have protected. But it was too late. Cora was gone long ago. Not in bitterness, but in brilliance. She didn't return to prove a point. She rose to prove her worth, to herself. And that made all the difference,